Hey everyone! So this week we were talking about tearjerkers, and I had to narrow my list down because I didn't want to bog you down with 12 billion suggestions of good tearjerkers. So I have about 5 or 6 books, maybe a few more. The first two I know Lauren mentioned, but they are awesome books, so they bear repeating. If I Stay and Where She Went by Gayle Forman. If I Stay is a sad book. Where She Went is a happier, sad book. I'll kind of explain. But If I Stay, honestly, I never once thought that it was happy. I guess there are some memories that evoke happiness, but it never took my mind off of all the crazy, sad things that were going on throughout the book. And so, pretty much throughout that book, I had a tear in my eye. Where She Went, on the other hand, has some sad moments at the beginning, but as the book progresses, things start to get happier. You kind of start to see this hope of a future. And by the end, I was so content with how everything worked out. So yeah, there were times when I teared up at that book, but really, they were like happy tears. Now, most of the books on my list are contemporary young adult, but this next one, Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein, is actually historical fiction. And historical fiction doesn't usually make me tear up, but this book is the story of 2 spies who are best friends. They're girls, and one of them is captured. And the book starts out being written as a confession while she is in prison. And that part didn't really seem so emotional to me. I understood that what she was going through was hell, but I didn't really feel like crying at that. But then about halfway through the book switches point of views to her friend who doesn't know she's been captured for a little while. And when she finds out and everything that happens after that, that part just tore me apart. I cried so much at that book. I had to put the book down at one point because I couldn't read through my tears. Yeah, that's like a whole box of Kleenex book if you plan on reading it, which I think you should. You need to stock up on Kleenex beforehand. But it's just an amazing book. It's so emotional and so moving. Next, this book is really odd for making me cry. It's When You Were Mine by Rebecca Serle, and it's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. And Rob is obviously Romeo, and Juliet is Juliet. And I hated them throughout the whole book. And then they died, and I cried. And I just cried and cried and cried because they were dead, and just finding out that these young people had died and they weren't going to have a future, and all these people they left behind, and everything about that part tore me up. And honestly, I really did hate these people throughout the book, so it didn't make sense to me. But even though I hated them, I thought the book was awesome, and I definitely thought it was emotional and that it might make some other people cry. I think it's an amazing book. I couldn't connect Rob and Juliet until they were dead, which sucks. In Honor by Jessi Kirby is another one. And this is another happy, sad book because it is about a girl who loses her brother. He is in the military and he's killed. And just kind of her thinking about everything she's not going to get to do with him, everything he's not going to get to ever do, things that she wants to do for him. That part, I couldn't help but tear up at. But then there's just some funny moments and just things that kind of brought happy tears to my eyes. So that one's a tearjerker in both sad and happy ways, and I kind of love the blending of that in that book. And then Waiting by Lynch Williams. It is a contemporary story told in verse, and it's the story of a girl who loses her twin brother. He dies, and she blames herself for his death, and her family blames her for his death, and she's just kind of all by herself. And that was the really sad part for me, is that she was going through all this and she couldn't even confide in her parents because they blamed her. And there were just, that part made me really sad and made me tear up. But finding out exactly what happened to him and why and how he died, that part was definitely the worst in terms of crying for me, because I couldn't stop crying at that. And then last, The Probability of Miracles by Wendy Wunder is another that Lauren mentioned, and It's honestly one of my favorite books out there, and I could go back and reread it over and over again. It starts out as what seems like it could be a happy book. Like, the girl is so freaking snarky and sarcastic, and I loved that about her. And her name is Campbell, like the soup. And she always jokes about that. And she really jokes about everything. I mean, she takes home a pet lobster because she doesn't want it to be killed. She's an awesome character. And then the fact that she has cancer and that they basically stopped her treatment because there's no way in hell she's going to live. Yeah. It's definitely got its sad moments, kind of these things where she realizes that she's not going to get to do these things unless she does them now. And it was a really emotional book, but also a very awesome book. So these are my tearjerkers that I would recommend to you. I think if you could only read one, it's really hard for me to say between Codename Verity and Probability of Miracles. They're very different tearjerkers, but they're both some of my favorite books ever. But yeah, you should read all these books if you get the chance. They're all really good. And I am very excited to say that I've added some new tearjerkers to my list this week. Don't tell the rest of the Totally Bookssessed girls, but I haven't read The Fault in Our Stars, so that's why it's not on my list. But yeah, I'm going to go, so now maybe I can go read The Fault in Our Stars before somebody kills me for not having read it. Leave your own tearjerker list in the comments if you feel like it. Otherwise, I hope to see you next week. I will be in New York City for Book Expo America, so I'm not sure if I'll have a video yet. I'm going to try and record it this weekend. But if I don't see you guys next week, I hope you guys have a great 2 weeks. Yeah, see you soon.